Thank you so much. My name is Priyankar Upadhyaya. It's a Sanskrit language name, which Upadhyaya means a professional teacher who charges money for teaching. And Priyankar is one who tries to endear everybody. That's a difficult task, as you know, please God. I come from the much celebrated these days, of course, that's the constituency of a Prime Minister, the ancient city of Varanasi, Benares, where we have a big university, old federal university, and I work in a center for peace research. Peace research is common to what you say, works and all, and I also hold a UNESCO chair for peace and intercultural understanding. And I must also mention that in the past I was fortunate to work with a lot of European initiatives. So my observations are a little more colored by experiences. I was a part of a core or EU FP7, a big mega project on cultural governance and conflict resolution. Samir is sitting there, he was also one of the participants there. And along with that, we have been regularly collaborating with PRIO, Peace Research Institute, around the project. So we have this tradition, and very recently we completed a project with the Berkhoff Center on traditional and non-traditional sources of conflict resolution. So the reason I mention it, not to add to my CV, but to say that some of what I'm going to say has that kind of bearing impact on it. Now, first is that also went very spontaneous, and that is what I like about it, and I'm going to try that. But I have a few points which were driven to me by Deval last minute about the 4 points, the key strength of collaborative research in EU and India. So I will try to fit in all that I remember of the symposia, Delhi symposia, on those these 4 bullet points or points. Now, first of all, I must say that a very intense discussion and marked by contestations as well as consensus, new networking, ideas, activist, scholar combination, and this is, I think, one of the very good takeaway from any such collaboration between India and Europe. We have different cultures, different magnitudes, different scales, and different languages. In India alone, we have nearly 20, 17, 18. There's a big dispute. Major languages, Europe also, and methodologies also. Like working with Berkhoff, people are oftentimes come across that it's not typical English that we use when we use the term. They are in different context. I think the advantage and the strength of this collaboration, proposed collaboration, ongoing collaboration is it's been multi-sited and transcontinental research, and which naturally interrogates the taken for granted theoretical and conceptual frames and denies any hegemonic assumption about universality or common nature of socio-cultural contingent meanings. Now, these hybrid methodologies are very helpful. I have seen it during the course of my own project, and it's not necessary to come to certain very basic minimal agreement about how we are going to carry out our own field of research. We did research on Meghalaya Northeast as a part of this Berkhoff project, and they had taken up Liberia and Colombia, and we had our Northeast, and we agreed to do our things differently, but at the end we could tally and converge our conclusions. So let's not bother much about trying to forge a consensus, and I think that's not the idea. We're so much talking about pluralities of peace discourses, etc., etc. Now, apart from the convergence and divergence, I think it is important, and I think that's a takeaway of this particular, symposia that we had at Delhi, was the good stories, the success stories. I mean, people tend to see more of challenges, but challenges are also at the same time opportunities. So the good stories where things work, scholars got together, I think they are very instructive and useful for the kind of discussion that we do. Now, first thing that we noticed, and it was inevitable, was that a very broad spectrum of discourses that featured any discussion on whether it is justice or power structure or peace. And starting from, I think it was nobody's idea to live in a narrow state-centric international relations perspective on peace studies. We straight away came to the notions of what in our peace research parlance we described as positive peace, the absence of both direct and indirect violence. We talked about structural violence, cultural violence, which is a very outstanding template to bring in all that we are discussing here. It's a question of poverty or social stratifications or any other thing. Incidentally, the structural violence idea, talking about the collaboration between India and Europe, was Johan Galtung had developed it in my city, sitting over Gandhian text, in which Gandhi made a distinction between the sinner and the sinner. But just to say that the story continues. Now, one thing that I have, talking about interdisciplinarity, we have noticed that in India, I think, because we talk about the viability of such a project and collaboration, and instantly we need to talk about what is happening in Indian universities also. There is a weakening of liberal arts and social sciences, and apart from just a couple of universities, that's not anybody's focus these days. And the universities are driven by the governmental resources and dictate. So that's one issue that one has to keep in mind. The good thing is that a lot of new centers of interdisciplinary studies are coming up, like Women's Studies Center and the Peace Studies Center, like the one we have here in Banaras and Jamia Millia and other places, wherein it is possible and it's very easy to carry out the interdisciplinarity, the kind of studies that we are talking about. Now, one of the things that really appealed to me in Sona was, redefining conflict with a focus on, as we call it, the routine violence, like everyday resistance and violence, bringing in the question of gender and violence against women, and bringing it to the core of peace and conflict. So, and also I think it was, I should flag out this, general agreement about the deficient institutional mechanism of governance to deal with rapid social changes causing inequality and differential access to power. This is really important in terms of the so-called impulse of globalization that's creating new challenges, new disparities, and new possibilities of good research between the two regions, if I can say so. Now, the value addition to EU-India cooperation, I think mutual learning itself is a great advantage. Learning each other's language, mindset, and also the security anxieties is very important. You sit around the question of justice, peace, etc., and talk to your partners in different cultures, and instantly you get to know certain ideas which are very helpful not only in terms of peace and development mandate and agendas, but also in terms of the business possibilities between Europe and India, and also in dealing with the non-traditional security threats, because you got to know the other side, and that's an area in which both the continents and both the regions should collaborate. Now, it's also very helpful, to explore the connections between identity, justice, conflict resolution, and the context, continents, and beyond. One feeling that I had was that we had quite a good discussion about the research being mostly done on India, not the other way around. And I would like to add that perhaps the Indian and the researchers and the European researchers can synergize their act together and work on other case studies also. Like our experience of working, the two methodologies, two group of people having their own lenses, working on, Colombia and Liberia could be very instructive to understand your own problem. So we don't have to just remain confined to our own regions. And so these researches and collaborations do inspire socially useful policy prescriptions, and that I thought was a good take on this. Now about the potentials of these topics to attract researchers for the social sciences and humanities. In India, the tradition is not really, humanities people, anthropology, literature, archaeology, even cultural studies people do not naturally coincide with the social science researchers as yet. And that's a challenge that we have, but we are not talking here so much about challenge, about the possibility. And I think the Sona discussion kind of encouraged discussion on bringing in or reopening the Indian paradigms of, around non-violence or peaceful coexistence, and they can be very useful in terms of, providing greater connection to the paradigm of peace, development, and other things. So I can keep on, mentioning these topics, but I think it's a very synergetic exercise, and look forward to more and more discussions, debates, workshops around this. Thank you.